Hey boys and girls, this is lesson 2.7, all about units of time. So in this lesson, you will learn how to convert units of time to smaller units of time. Make sure you get that written down. You get it dated for today in your math notebook. And then when you got that done, come on back. Okay, so I put on here for you a couple different graphics. One is a picture of a clock, and the other is a picture of a graph of time. Notice that on the graph of time we've got minutes and seconds, and hours and minutes as the two different scales that are there for you. So then I just want to ask you a couple questions for you to think about. You're going to jot the answers to these in your notebook. But if you just write the answer in your notebook, do you think it's going to mean anything to you later when you go back to look at it? Remember the conversation we had in class about how your notebook is meant to help you. So don't just write down whatever you think, if it's 2 minutes or 120 seconds, and just put that in your notebook, because that won't mean anything to you later. So make sure you give yourself a little bit more help than that. So here is the question. Does it take 2 minutes or 120 seconds to brush your teeth? And the other question is, does it take closer to 1 hour or 600 minutes to clean your room? What are your thoughts on those two things? After you have a chance to jot down those answers, come on back to the next slide to check out what I had to say. So, tricky. 2 minutes is the same as 120 seconds. So, if you take about that long, then it would be both. And for cleaning your room, unless it takes you 10 hours, that'd be scary, to clean your room, closer to 1 hour would be the answer that most people would say. So that would be the one that we'd be looking for you to say if you were asked a question like that. What would be the general correct answer? And it would be closer to 1 hour. Okay, so just like we measure length in yards and feet and inches, like we've been talking about, we could also measure time in hours, minutes, and seconds. And we can go more talking about time, just like we could go more talking about length. But those are some things just to make sure you have that in your frame of mind as to what we're talking about today. In your notebook, jot down a few ways that you or we use time. What comes to your mind when we talk about it? How do we use time? So jot down a few things, and when you have that done, come on back. Another question I want you to think about and jot down in your notebook is, what's the longest unit of time that you can think of? How about the smallest? When I started thinking about those two questions, I was like, oh, well, that's easy. It's blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, oh, no, wait. I could go bigger. I could go bigger. So I'm wondering if that will happen to you as well. So pause me and go ahead and answer those questions, and then we will actually talk about that in class when you come to see me for the lesson. So I want you thinking, I want you to jot some things down. Longest unit of time, smallest unit of time you can think of. Okay, so down at the bottom of this scale, this table, I'm asking you a couple more questions. How can we use this scale to find out how many minutes are in 3 hours? Does this remind you of a previous lesson where we were having to convert yards and feet, maybe? So very similar. So if I'm going to try and do that, could I just go to the 3 hour mark on the bottom scale and then slide my finger to the bottom of the line and see that it would be 180 minutes? I think I could do that. And then here's a question you're going to try and answer, and then we'll check to see how you're doing. So Mara spent 4 hours and 20 minutes being lost in her book. How can this scale help us to find out how many minutes she read? Take a look at that, see if you can answer that. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in class. I'd like you to take a look at this page in your math journal, page 49 in your math journal. all about units of time, and you're going to complete problems 1 through 5. Make sure that you understand how you can use those scales to convert. So fill in the tables below with those scales helping you along the way. Okay? When you have that done, come on back. And here are the answers to that. I hope this is what you have for yours. And then there's the answer to the bottom one as well. So double check this, make sure this is what you have. If not, make sure you don't scribble out or erase your answer to fill in these. I want to see what you didn't understand the first time so that I'll know what I need to talk to you about. So make sure that I can tell, okay? When you have that done, checking, then you can go on. So here's some questions for you based on that previous page, 49. How could you use your answer to the number of minutes in 3 hours to find the number of minutes in 6 hours? And how could you use your answer to the number of seconds in 4 minutes to find the number of seconds in 12 minutes? So basically, I'm asking, so how did you convert from hours to minutes rather? And how from minutes to seconds? How are you doing that? So jot down some answers to these questions in your notebook, but make sure that the information makes sense to you in your notebook, so if you go back to read that in a few days, you know what you're talking about. And I'll be looking at it to help our conversation when we meet together. And then further from that, so what happens when we go from a larger unit of time, such as hours, to a smaller unit of time, such as seconds? What happens? And why does that happen? Jot down what you think in your notebook to all of these questions. These should all really get your mind thinking for you to be able to answer them. So you're going to probably have to pause me while you get that taken care of, and then when you're done getting that down and getting your thoughts written down, come on back. Here are the answers to those questions, so just double check what you have written to see if this is what you have. Your answers wouldn't have to be identical to mine, and again, I'm not looking for you to erase in your notebook. If yours is really different than mine, cross yours off and write mine in red or a pen, because you should be doing your math in pencil. Write it in so that you know and I know it's something that we could look at together to make sure that you actually do understand all of this. This is definitely a conversation we're going to have together in math class, but I want to make sure you have a chance to take a look at it and compare your thoughts and mine. All right, when you're done checking over that and correcting yours if you need to, go on. So then the next question, so what happens when we go from a smaller unit of time, such as seconds, to a larger unit of time, such as minutes? Hopefully you would get, then the numbers get smaller. And why would that be? Because it takes a smaller number of larger units to represent the same amount of time. I hope that makes sense to you. We'll talk about it. Okay, so let's now apply what we've just learned to a story problem. So Mr. Kelly ran his first Detroit Marathon in 3 hours and 59 minutes. He ran his second Detroit Marathon in 4 hours and 2 minutes. How many minutes did he spend running those 2 marathons? And what steps did you take to solve this problem? Make sure I can see all of the work for that in your notebook. Trying to see if you can solve that. All right? Give it a go. Pause the video. Come back when you think you have it. Okay, here's what I'm saying. He spent 481 minutes. And the way that I got that was that I added together the 3 hours and 59 minutes with the 4 hours and 2 minutes. And I did that by taking one of the 2 minutes from the 4 hours and 2 minutes and adding it to the 59 minutes to make one more hour. So then I had 4 hours plus 4 hours and 1 minute. Okay, so that gave me 8 hours and 1 minute. I know there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. So I did 60 times the 8 hours that I said, and that's 480. And then I added 1 extra minute that was left over, and I got 481 minutes. Hopefully that makes sense to you, and you had something similar. Again, you don't have to use my exact words, but make sure that you're explaining that. And if you could explain it like you're talking to a kindergartner, we're going to know that you know what you're talking about. Okay, so practice that some more now by completing page 50 in your math journal. And when you're done with that, check your answers on the next slide. And there you go. And again, cross off if you get it incorrect. Fill in the right answer so you'll have that to study from. But let me see that you got it wrong so I'll know what I need to talk to you personally about. Okay, that'll be it for this lesson. I'll see you tomorrow.